We need to understand how this happened so we can stop it from happening again. There was public resources. The George Washington Bridge, a public resource, used for political purposes. That's intolerable and should not be allowed to happen again.
What do you think of the governor's future, Governor Christie's future at this point?
I don't know about the governor's future at this point. Clearly, the governor is in damage control mode. I think that he does owe the people of Fort Lee an apology. He does owe the people of the state of New Jersey an apology. He does owe the legislature, who he belittled and ridiculed for looking into this, an apology. And the apologies are fine, but it doesn't answer the questions.
Would you consider calling him?
I think we have a list of people that grows exponentially each time we get additional information. We need to hear from Bridget Kelly. We need to hear from Mr. Stepien. We need to hear from Mr. Druniak. We need to hear from Charlie McKenna. And the list in the governor's office may expand. I think the simple thing to happen here is if the governor is true to his words that he wants to get to the bottom of it, I'd like to see full cooperation. I don't think this committee should have to resort to subpoena authority to get documents out of the governor's office. Turn over the emails from Bridget Kelly. Turn over the emails from Bill Stepien. Turn over the emails from Michael Druniak. Let the committee see these and let the committee decide what took place here. We don't want to see something sanitized and sent to us, and we shouldn't have to fight for them.
What's your reaction, John, to the whole tone of his news conference? He was apologetic. He said he felt humiliated. He apologized to members of the media, to the people of New Jersey, to the people of Fort Lee. Is this a smokescreen in your opinion, or is this something that's genuinely coming from his heart? Because he looked very sincere.
Well, I can't speak to his sincerity. As I said, it's appropriate for him to apologize. I think it's a couple of months too late, but I think it's appropriate that he apologize to the people of Fort Lee, that he apologize to the people of the state of New Jersey, to the people who use the George Washington Bridge, to the legislature, but it still doesn't answer the questions.
From what happened here today, it seems like you can get Bridget Kelly to come here and testify. You can get Baroni, all these folks here to testify, but they're going to plead the fifth. So how do you get any real answers about what happened? What do you think it's going to take?
Well, since those folks aren't here yet, and I haven't heard from them, I'm not going to presume that they're going to take the fifth. We're going to ask through subpoena, have those people come before this committee. We're going to ask for additional documents using our subpoena authority, and we're going to see what we get, and we'll make that judgment when we get or don't get those documents, when we get or don't get that testimony.
You think you're ever going to get the answers to this?
Well, all along, when this thing started, everybody said, well, this is not possible that this could have been a political operation. It probably was some type of traffic study. And as we've gone through this process, we've gotten more answers. And as we've gotten those answers, we've seen that this is not any type of official government operation. It was political retribution. We need to understand why there was political retribution. We need to understand who was involved in authorizing that. I find it hard to believe that Bridget Kelly, on her own, came up with the idea to divert traffic lanes in Fort Lee. We need to have that answer.
Can you talk about how these documents were given to you, why these documents, why the redactions were made, and what the process was by which you got them and then they were made public?
The documents were subpoenaed under the committee's authority, and these were part of many subpoenas.
But what was the back and forth between you and the lawyer in terms of getting these documents and not others?
Well, there was no back and forth. We submitted a subpoena. They asked for a few extra days. We gave them a few extra days. We got a production of 907 documents from Mr. Wildstein's attorney, Mr. Zegas. In that, there were redactions. There were lines that were blacked out. That was part of the colloquy today between me and Mr. Zegas. He has said that he's going to try to give us those documents that have been redacted, and those that he feels are privileged, he'll give to us and have the committee decide whether they should not be provided. But clearly, he is maintaining a legal argument, and will continue to do that, I suppose, based on what he said, that he's going to continue to try to challenge us in court, although he was unsuccessful this morning, and I suspect in the future he'll be unsuccessful.
Can you tell us about anything about the remaining documents that haven't surfaced yet? You've reviewed hundreds, thousands. What more to the story is there in those documents?
Well, what the documents paint a picture of is an effort to exact some type of political consequence, some type of impact on the town of Fort Lee that originated in the governor's office, a very robust effort to then come up with a plausible explanation for why it took place, a lot of effort made to maintain that facade for a long time, and then finally the production of documents that really eliminated any pretense that there was a study. I know the governor today said, well, there may have actually still been a study. I mean, Pat Foy didn't know about it. Nobody in the Port Authority knew about it except apparently David Wildstein and Bill Baroni. And we saw the one email from Mr. Wildstein on the second day of the traffic jam. I have an idea to make that better. I think he came up with the idea of the traffic study on the second day of the traffic debacle.
John, is Bridgegate going to hurt your relationship as the Democratic majority with the governor moving forward? He's got the State of the State next week. There's a lot of talk about bipartisan cooperation. What's the state of that now?
We have a job to do. The governor has a job to do. We need to do our job.
How unlikely do you think it is that he didn't know? I mean, just from your gut,
Well, as I
what
said,
does it
I
tell
think
you?
it just strains credibility that significant people in his administration are all on these emails, and he continues to maintain that he had no knowledge. It just, I mean, there's an email in there. I'll give you an example. We saw a vociferous statement by Michael Druniak, something to the effect the governor does not get involved in traffic studies. Yet there's an email in which it says from Mr. Wildstein, the governor has approved the traffic study for Springfield. And so which is it? The governor does or doesn't get involved in traffic studies? There's a lot of contrary information that really strains credibility.
What about Druniak's role?
Mr. Wildstein, too, when you started him off talking about the exchange among Simpson, Christie, and himself.
Well,
What were you getting
I don't
at?
know why I have a string of emails at the beginning of August that talk about arranging a meeting between the governor and General Sampson. But I do have right after that an email from Bridget Kelly out of the governor's office saying it's time to make traffic in Fort Lee. I have to assume that there's some connection between the two. I wasn't able to get an answer from Mr. Wildstein. I would have hoped that he would have been able to say that meeting took place and they talked about the Bridget Kelly's email or the authorization given to Bridget Kelly. I wanted to ask Mr. Wildstein, why did he feel compelled to act upon a direction from Bridget Kelly? Was she his superior? Was she the person he took orders from? We weren't given an opportunity to ask those questions.
But your assumption is that by virtue of that being produced, that it has something to do with this matter generally.
Our subpoena asked for documents that related to the lane closure, and we got, in response to that, a email or text message chain about setting up a meeting between the governor and David Sampson. I have to assume that that meeting had something to do with the lane closure.
What about Michael Druniak's role? Now, he seems to have participated in making press releases that look like part of a cover-up. Maybe, do you think he knew about it? And if he did, when he was taking part in this email exchange, do you think that he didn't talk with the governor about it?
Well, as I said, I mean, we're talking about very senior people in the administration. I find it hard to believe that these senior people are cherry-picking what they're discussing with the governor. We know that Mr. Wildstein and Mr. Druniak met for dinner. We know that 2 days later, Mr. Wildstein resigned. We saw email exchanges between Mr. Druniak and Mr. Wildstein, essentially going over the language of the statement that would be issued upon his resignation. We saw in that email that this has been approved by the governor, not Camella, meaning I think Maria Camella, or Charlie McKenna. And so we see that at the time that Mr. Wildstein was resigning, there was a lot of people in the administration involved in deciding what would be said. I can't believe that they just said, well, this guy's resigning and we want to know if it's okay to say this, given all of the stuff that had been going on. I mean, you know, you'd really have to close one eye and really believe something that's not real to say, at the time the committee is investigating the George Washington Bridge, at a time when he has been fingered by Mr. Foy and Mr. Baroni as the author of it, he's resigning, we write this glowing statement, and I know nothing about the reasons. It just strains credibility.
Chairman, if I may, let's come back to the procedural on this. You got the contempt vote today. Is there a trial legislatively, and what kind of penalties does he face?
Well, any law enforcement, a prosecutor could pick that up and can either choose to issue an indictment or prosecute him on, it's a fourth-degree crime for failure to comply with the committee. Well, it's out there, and if the Mercer County prosecutor wants to act upon it, it's part of the public record and they can act upon
But
it.
it could die as is.
No, like, if he doesn't contest it in court, what would happen? He would pay the fine?
The prosecutor would prosecute the crime, and he would be guilty of a fourth-degree crime.
What will you subpoena next, when, and
Well,
why?
I think Bridget Kelly is a logical individual to bring before the committee. I think that we need to hear from Mr. Stepien. I mean, clearly, these are two people that the governor was most outraged at, where he terminated Bridget Kelly and revoked his nomination of Mr. Stepien as state GOP chairman and took away his consulting contract from the RGA. Since they are the focus of the governor's ire in this, it would be appropriate for us to ask them questions about what they knew, who they discussed it with, was the governor involved, and who knew what when.
Action by this panel before subpoena power expires on the 14th.
I'm going to discuss it with committee members, and we'll make a decision going forward.
So it sounds as if you're saying that the administration is really not being cooperative at all, that you have to go after them.
Well, so far they haven't.
What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that there's something they don't want us to see.
The governor pledged to cooperate today. You're not taking him at his word?
Well, he's pledged to cooperate, but he didn't pledge to cooperate with the Assembly Transportation Committee. He pledged to cooperate very generically. I'm not sure if he meant cooperate with the federal authorities who are probing it. I'm not sure he's talking about Senator Rockefeller's inquiry. I'm not sure if he's talking about the Inspector General's. I'd like some more specificity about it. I think, as I said earlier, the best way to resolve this is open up the doors, let us have the documents we ask for, let us review them. And because right now it seems like the governor is going to do a review and he's going to decide what he's going to tell us. I think the committee needs to do the review, and the committee needs to decide what happened here and make decisions. And most importantly, make decisions so this abuse of power can't happen again. Because at the heart of this whole thing, we saw people with an unbridled abuse of power who thought that no one was looking and took great steps to try to conceal it. And that's the story here. We can't allow that to happen, not with an agency as important as the Port Authority.